Diogo Gonçalves was only 21 years old when it finally seemed that life was beginning to reward him. After years of hardship, he had built a career as an IT technician at the Vila Vita Park Resort in Portugal's Algarve region. Just weeks earlier, he had received around €70,000 in court-awarded compensation following the death of his mother in a road collision several years before. Friends later explained that Diogo wasn't planning a lavish new lifestyle. Much of the money was intended to pay for specialist care for his disabled father before buying a home nearby so they could remain close together. Those plans were entirely in keeping with the man everyone knew. Diogo was described as gentle, responsible, and devoted to his family. He had worked hard to retrain in information technology after leaving a management job at McDonald's, and his future finally appeared to be taking shape. There was another reason for his optimism too. He believed his friendship with a former colleague named Maria Malveiro was slowly becoming something more. On the 20th of March 2020, Maria agreed to visit him at his home. 2 days later, his lawyer became increasingly concerned. Every telephone call went unanswered, yet text messages continued arriving from Diogo's phone. Then a social media post appeared claiming he had suddenly fallen in love with a woman from France and had decided to move abroad immediately. The explanation sounded plausible until you considered who Diogo was. Only recently he had discussed using his compensation to care for his father. He had responsibilities, long-term plans, and family commitments. Vanishing without warning contradicted everything that his closest loved ones thought they knew about him. After one final unanswered message, his lawyer contacted the police. Officers forced entry into Diogo's home and found almost nothing to explain his disappearance. There were no obvious signs of violence, no overturned furniture, and no visible blood. Yet, something still felt wrong. His clothes and everyday belongings remained inside the house, while his Mercedes had disappeared. Friends pointed out that anyone genuinely emigrating would almost certainly have packed far more than Diogo apparently had. 4 days later, police located the missing Mercedes, abandoned near the cliffs at Sagres. Inside were Diogo's laptops, his bass guitar, and dozens of cigarette ends collected for forensic testing. The search of the surrounding coastline produced a far more disturbing discovery. Wrapped in plastic near the base of nearby cliffs were part of human remains. Almost simultaneously, tourists more than 150 kilometers away discovered additional remains floating in water near Tavira. DNA confirmed they belonged to Diogo. The post-mortem examination concluded that he had suffered a severe assault before his time ultimately ending after being throttled. Investigators also found diazepam in his system, indicating he had been spiked at some stage before his passing. Whoever was responsible had also gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal both the crime and his disappearance. Detectives soon learned that the last person Diogo had planned to meet was Maria Malveiro. She told officers they had simply shared a friendly evening before going their separate ways and denied knowing anything about what happened afterwards. The evidence quickly began to contradict her account. Cell phone records placed Maria at Diogo's home for several hours on the day he disappeared. Bank records then revealed money being transferred out of Diogo's account into Maria's, after it was confirmed he was no longer alive. CCTV cameras captured Maria withdrawing cash using his bank card. Then investigators noticed something else. Half of that money had been transferred into the account of another woman. Her name was Mariana Fonseca. She was a 23-year-old nurse employed at Lagos Hospital. Mobile phone data showed Mariana's phone had traveled with Maria's throughout the critical period, including placing her near Diogo's home on the day he disappeared. As detectives investigated further, they uncovered the biggest surprise yet. Maria and Mariana had secretly been in a relationship for some time. Only a small number of people knew. Diogo himself appears never to have realized. He believed Maria was single and had been pursuing a genuine romantic relationship with her. Both women were eventually arrested, but the investigation became even more complicated because neither could keep their story straight. Maria first claimed she had acted entirely alone. Later, she admitted Mariana had helped afterwards, but insisted she knew nothing beforehand. Eventually, she reversed course again, accusing Mariana of being the true mastermind behind the entire plan. Mariana also repeatedly altered her account. At various times she denied involvement, admitted cleaning the scene, acknowledged supplying diazepam while insisting she believed it was for insomnia, denied witnessing the fatal assault, then accused Maria of manipulating and coercing her into helping cover everything up. The changing accounts left investigators relying heavily on forensic evidence, financial records, digital evidence, and mobile phone data rather than either woman's testimony. Police concluded that Diogo had been targeted after receiving his compensation payment. Investigators believe Maria had exploited his feelings for her to gain access to his home, while both women then participated in concealing the crime, transferring his money, staging his disappearance, and disposing of his remains. During the investigation, it also emerged that both women acknowledged being influenced by the television series Dexter when deciding how to dispose of the body. When the case reached court in 2021, Maria was convicted of murder and sentenced to the maximum 25 years in prison. Mariana's outcome shocked Portugal. She was acquitted of murder and received only a suspended sentence for offences connected to concealing the crime scene and disposing of the body. The ruling provoked immediate outrage, with prosecutors and Diogo's family arguing that the evidence demonstrated far greater involvement. Years later, the appeal court agreed. Mariana's acquittal was overturned, and she was sentenced to 25 years in prison, later reduced to 23 years by Portugal's Supreme Court. Rather than surrender, she fled the country before the sentence became final, believing she had escaped extradition. She had not. After an international search involving Interpol, Portuguese authorities located her in Indonesia and returned her to Portugal, where she is now serving her 23-year sentence. Meanwhile, Maria passed away in prison in 2021 while serving her own sentence. On the 15th of February 2019, a power cut swept through the small Croatian village of Palovec. Inside one family home, the outage created an opportunity to finally tackle a job that had been put off for years. An old chest freezer sitting beneath the staircase needed to be moved, so renovation work could continue. Smiljana Cernec's daughter and her fiancé began dragging it into the middle of the hallway, unaware they were about to solve one of Croatia's oldest missing person cases. When they first forced the lid open, they found nothing unusual beyond thick ice and bags of frozen vegetables. They decided to leave it overnight to thaw, before emptying it properly the following morning. They had no idea that the freezer had remained largely untouched for almost 19 years. To understand why the freezer was such a big deal, we have to go back to the summer of 2000. Jasmina Dominic was 23 years old, and by all accounts had a promising future ahead of her. Unlike her older sister Smiljana, she had excelled at school before moving to Zagreb to continue her education, while supporting herself through part-time work. Friends described her as intelligent, hard-working, and ambitious. Their upbringing, however, had been far from stable. Their mother spent long periods working abroad in Germany, while their father travelled for work, struggled with alcohol, and was often absent. For much of their teenage years, the sisters were largely left to manage on their own. As adults, their lives began moving in very different directions. Jasmina focused on education, while Smiljana remained in Palovec, worked as a waitress and, according to evidence later heard in court, developed a serious gambling problem that repeatedly caused financial difficulties. Relatives and neighbours later recalled frequent arguments between the sisters. On one occasion, a concerned family member was reportedly contacted because Jasmina was allegedly being mistreated during one of their disputes. Gradually, Jasmina spent less and less time at the family home, choosing instead to remain in Zagreb whenever possible. Sometime during the summer of 2000, she returned to Palovec for what appeared to be a short visit. Nobody outside the family would ever see her again. The disappearance that followed was marred by confusion from the very beginning. Jasmina's father attempted to report her missing, but arrived at the police station heavily intoxicated. During the conversation, he suggested several explanations himself, saying his daughter might have travelled to France, found work on a cruise ship, or gone abroad to visit family. Faced with contradictory information from an unreliable witness, no formal missing person investigation began. Meanwhile, rumors spread across the village. Some believed Yasmina had moved overseas. Others claimed she was working on cruise ships or had settled permanently in France. Whenever neighbors asked questions, Smiljana consistently reassured them that her sister was alive, well, and living abroad. According to family members, she even claimed they remained in regular contact. Those assurances delayed serious concern for years. It was not until August 2005 that Yasmina's mother returned from Germany and formally reported her daughter missing. Police finally launched a proper investigation. Officers interviewed friends, former classmates and university contacts in Zagreb. They searched the family home, examined Yasmina's belongings, and eventually issued an international missing person notice through Interpol. Despite years of inquiries, investigators uncovered nothing that explained where she had gone. The case gradually became another unsolved disappearance. Time continued moving forward. Yasmina's father died in 2013, without ever discovering what had happened to his daughter. Smiljana married, raised 3 children, and continued living in the same house in Palovec. Anonymous tips occasionally reached investigators, including one suggesting Yasmina's body had been hidden in a septic tank, but searches found nothing. With no new evidence, the mystery remained unsolved. Until, that is, the power outage in February of 2019. The morning after opening the freezer, Smiljana was resting in another room, while her daughter and future son-in-law resumed emptying its contents. Beneath the frozen food, they uncovered a large object wrapped in layers of plastic. As they cut through the wrapping, they realized they were looking at the body of a woman. Police arrived within a matter of minutes. Before examining the remains, investigators noticed something remarkable scattered across the floor. Many of the unopened food packages removed from the freezer still carried manufacturing dates from early June 2000. The freezer appeared to have remained virtually undisturbed since the very period when Yasmina disappeared. The body was quickly identified as Yasmina Dominic. The post-mortem examination concluded she had met her end after suffering multiple heavy blows to the head. Experts also determined that her body had been placed into the freezer very shortly after death, before normal post-mortem changes had begun. Ironically, the freezing conditions had preserved crucial forensic evidence for almost 2 decades. Investigators immediately arrested Smiljana. According to reports, during questioning, she briefly admitted responsibility before later withdrawing the statement once legal representation became available. Regardless of that disputed confession, detectives had accumulated substantial physical evidence. Fingerprints recovered from the plastic wrapping matched Smiljana, while DNA linked her directly to the materials used to conceal Yasmina's body. Investigators also knew she had spent years falsely telling relatives that her sister was alive abroad, despite the evidence showing Yasmina had never left the family home. The trial began later that year. Smiljana denied murdering her sister and insisted they had shared a close relationship. Prosecutors acknowledged they could not establish a definitive motive, but argued the forensic evidence spoke for itself. In June 2020, the court found Smiljana guilty of murdering Yasmina and sentenced her to 15 years in prison. Croatia's Supreme Court later upheld the conviction. Even now, aspects of the case remain uncertain. No clear motive was ever established in court, and some questions about exactly what happened inside the family home in the summer of 2000 may never be answered. What is beyond dispute is that one of Croatia's longest-running missing person cases ended just meters from where it had begun. For nearly 19 years, family life continued around an old freezer beneath a staircase, while the answer to a mystery that had consumed an entire village had been sitting silently inside it all along. When Omar bin Omran disappeared from the Algerian city of Jelfa in 1998, there was every reason to believe he had become another casualty of the country's brutal civil war. He was just 19 years old. Algeria was in the middle of what became known as the Black Decade, a conflict between government forces and armed Islamist groups that claimed an estimated 200,000 lives and left thousands more missing. Families across the country watched loved ones vanish without explanation, and Omar's disappearance sadly did not seem unusual for the time. His family assumed he had either been abducted or killed, joining countless other victims whose fate would never be known. Years turned into decades. His mother never stopped hoping for answers, but those answers never came. She died in 2013, believing she would never discover what had happened to her son. His relatives continued living with the uncertainty that so often follows wartime disappearances, convinced that Omar had simply become another name on a very long list of missing people. Then, in May 2024, everything changed in a truly unbelievable way. Authorities in Jelfa received information suggesting that Omar might still be alive. According to prosecutors, the tip came after a dispute involving the suspect's family led to information appearing on social media that pointed investigators towards a nearby property. Acting on the report, police searched the home of a 61-year-old neighbor who lived only around 200 meters from Omar's own family home. Hidden beneath a sheepfold, concealed under stacks of hay, officers found a trapdoor leading down into a cellar. Inside that door, in a twist that you'd struggle to believe on a TV show, they discovered Omar. He was, amazingly, still alive. He was now 45 years old. Footage released after the rescue showed a heavily bearded man emerging from the underground space, where investigators believe he had spent much of the previous 26 years. Officials immediately arranged medical and psychological treatment, while arresting the homeowner, who reportedly attempted to flee as officers arrived. Algeria's Ministry of Justice described the allegations as a heinous crime and opened a full criminal investigation. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the case was not simply the length of the alleged captivity, but its location. Omar had reportedly been held just a short walk from the house where he grew up. Local reports stated that he could sometimes see members of his own family from where he was being held, yet later told rescuers he never called out because he believed he was under a spell cast by his captor. Authorities have not publicly confirmed the circumstances behind that belief, but it illustrates the profound psychological impact that years of captivity may have had on him. Following his rescue, prosecutors charged the 61-year-old suspect with kidnapping and related offences. Several other individuals were also investigated over allegations that they failed to report what had happened. In late 2024, an Algerian court sentenced the principal defendant to life imprisonment. Two others received prison sentences for failing to notify the authorities, while two additional defendants were acquitted. Even after the legal proceedings, the case continues to raise deeply unsettling questions. How could someone remain hidden for more than a quarter of a century, so close to home, so close to a family that was actively looking without being discovered? How did a disappearance that was initially blamed on civil war actually conceal something entirely different? And perhaps most heartbreaking of all, how different might the outcome have been had Omar's mother lived just long enough to see the day her son finally walked free? After 26 years of uncertainty, Omar's family finally learned the truth. It was not the answer they had expected, nor one that anyone could easily comprehend. Instead of lying in an unmarked grave somewhere beyond reach, Omar had spent almost 3 decades imprisoned by what he believed to be a magic spell. Thank you so much for watching. I'm uploading daily true crime and dark content here on this channel, so make sure that you're subscribed, hit like on the video, and also drop a comment so you get shown more of my stuff. Please do be careful out there, and I'll see you tomorrow.